Hola, soy la profesora Clark, and today we're going to be talking about the verb estar. Estar is one of three verbs in Spanish that mean to be. The other verbs that we've seen before are ser and I. Estar has a variety of uses that we're going to talk about today, and estar has an irregular conjugation. Let's have a look at the conjugation for estar. You'll see that estar has an irregular first person singular, estoy. And as we look at second and third person singular and plural, estás, usted está, él está, ella está, estáis, están, ustedes están, ellos están, ellas están. All of these forms have a graphic accent. The only form that doesn't have any sort of irregularity is the nosotros form, estamos. The first use of estar is that we use it with the preposition a, en, sobre, de to express a current location of object or person. So we've seen this question before. ¿Dónde están ustedes? Estamos en la sala. The question word ¿dónde is answered by en la sala. And we see that the verb in the question, estar, is in the second person, followed by the verb in the first person in the answer. Same thing occurs in the second question, ¿Dónde está el libro? ¿Dónde is asking where, sobre la mesa is answering, and está el libro simply is reinforced by an inversion of the syntax, el libro está. El libro está sobre la mesa. In this case, the verbs are in third person. The second use of estar is to express a physical and emotional state of being or present resultant condition. We may have to use a past participle as an adjective when we're describing a present or resultant condition. For example, ¿Cómo está el proyector? When I ask this question, I want to know what is the current condition of the projector. El proyector está roto. The projector is broken. That is the current condition. But this also indicates that at one point it was not broken. Currently it is, but at one point it was not broken. So in a sense, estar would describe the effect of a prior cause. The same thing is true for ¿Cómo está usted? Yo estoy cansada. When I ask this question and answer it, estoy cansada, the indication is that something caused me to be currently tired. So when I have yo estoy cansada, I am tired, a follow-up question when we're asking ¿Cómo está? Or ¿Cómo estás? Is a why. We can always ask ¿Por qué? Because we know that it is a current condition or a caused condition. The third use of estar is to express a change from the norm, whether perceived or real. I'm not really going to go too much into this, but basically we use these with figures of speech. So if we look at this second one, estás loco, debes considerar los hechos, you're crazy. This does not mean that the person that they're speaking to needs to be committed or needs to go on medication. It's just a figure of speech. The fourth use, which is some new information, is using estar with the progressive. Here's an overview of what the progressive looks like. We have ¿Qué está haciendo la jefa? La jefa está hablando con el empleado. You can see that there's a form of estar here, but here is now an unfamiliar form that's hooked onto it to make one action that is progressing. So let's have a look at how this compound action is formed. The present progressive is a compound tense. It uses two verbs, an auxiliary verb, which is estar, and the main verb in the gerund form. Estar would be conjugated in all of its possible 6 forms. So it's estoy, and estás, and está, estamos, estáis, están. And the gerund only has one form, depending on the ending, but every verb in Spanish has a gerund form, just like every verb in Spanish has an infinitive form. How do we form the gerund? Well, we start with an infinitive. This one is hablar. And we're going to take off the AR, like we would do in the first steps of conjugation. But instead of adding 6 different endings, we're only going to add one ending, and that's ando. So it turns into hablando. Hablando is the gerund. So if I add one of 6 forms of estar plus a gerund form, I get the progressive. If estar is in the present tense, then I get the present progressive. Let's have another look at the grammar from a different perspective. This is the basic grammar I just went over in the previous slide. Here is that same grammar diagrammed. So we have our equation here. The auxiliary verb plus the main verb equals one progressing action. So what are the characteristics of estar? Well, estar will have the 6 forms in any tense. In this case, we're using present tense for estar because we haven't learned any other tenses. Another characteristic is that it'll agree with the subject of the sentence and it identifies who is doing the action. So over here, we're seeing when the action is occurring. And right here, we're seeing who the action is done by. And here's another extra information. The auxiliary verb is always going to be estar. It will always be conjugated in 6 forms, first, second, third person, singular or plural. Now let's move on to the second part of the compound action, and that's the main verb. The main verb will only have one form, the gerund. But since every verb in Spanish has a gerund form, it could be any one of those forms. We have regular gerunds and irregular forms, and we'll see what those irregular forms look like on the slides that follow. If estar describes when and who, then the main action, verbo principal, describes what the action is. And the fourth characteristic is that there are spelling changes in certain forms. So we see that if we add column 1 plus column 2, we get one progressing action that is non-ceasing. Here is how it would look. Notice how I'm conjugating estar. Yo estoy hablando. Tú estás hablando. Él o ella está hablando. Usted está hablando. Nosotros estamos hablando. Vosotros estáis hablando. Él o ellas están hablando. And ustedes están hablando. But notice how the gerund stays the same throughout every single one of these forms, and how it follows the grammar on the previous page. The other thing is that if it's in black, then it's mandatory. So these pronouns, él, ella, usted, ellos, ellas, ustedes, those pronouns are mandatory. The ones in gray are optional. You may use them if you like, but they are not mandatory. So let's look at how the gerund can go through some different forms. Here is how we form the gerund for regular ER verbs like comer. Comer, we take out the ER and we add IENDO and we get comiendo. We have other verbs as well. Beber, volver, figura bebiendo and volviendo. And here we have a spelling change when it comes to the gerund for leer, leyendo. But keep in mind something. Volver, that is a stem changer when you conjugate it in the present tense. But notice how it is a regular gerund. You may encounter that. Some forms of a verb may have irregularities and other forms may not. You have to be very careful. Let's look at some of the IR verbs. We have vivir, and vivir would go to viviendo. Asistir also goes to asistiendo. But then, right down here, we see that there are some irregularities when it comes to servir, vestir, dormir, ir, and oír. Here's a stem change, sirviendo. Here's another stem change, vistiendo. Here's a stem change, durmiendo. Here's a spelling change, yendo. And here's another spelling change, oyendo. As we study more Spanish, you'll also find that these verbs that are starred can be a reflexive. So here we have examples of irregular gerunds. If I look at oír, oyendo, ir, yendo, mentir, mintiendo, servir, sirviendo, decir, diciendo, morir, muriendo, poder, pudiendo, leer, leyendo, vestir, vistiendo, dormir, and durmiendo. Incidentally, what do most of these verbs have in common? Well, I've said it before in class. The majority of these verbs are IR verbs. Not all of them, like poder and leer, but a lot of them are. So make sure that you keep an eye out for irregularities when it comes to IR verbs. And here we have the use of the progressive. It's an event actually in progress in the present. Ella está durmiendo. Now, by virtue of using está durmiendo as opposed to ella duerme ahora or ella duerme pronto, ella está durmiendo is only eligible for now and progressing. That's it. If I were just to use ella duerme ahora, that could be now. Or I could also modify it with ella duerme siempre. So ella duerme ahora could be now. Ella duerme pronto could be in the future. And ella duerme siempre is a habit. Duerme is used with these adverbs to express now future habit. Está durmiendo can only represent a now and progressing action. And that's the difference between present progressive, and present indicative. And that is, and now we're going to conclude the uses of estar. Estar is more or less transitive or changing. It's used specifically for current location, donde está, the resultant or current or perceived state of nouns como está, the progressive tense, estamos aprendiendo español. And in a nutshell, it describes the effect of the cause. Thanks for joining me today. If you have any questions, you know how to get in touch with me. Gracias and hasta luego.